Welcome to this series of lessons on how to pass Grade 5 Theory. If you're like the majority of those I've taught over the past third of a century or so, you're trying to pass Grade 5 Theory because you need it to go on to Grade 6, 7 or 8 on an instrument, and you've been putting it off. And you've just reached that point where you can't put it off any further. Indeed, you've already learned some or all of your Grade 6 pieces and scales. You're not doing Grade 5 Theory because theory in all its forms fascinates you, or because you are consumed with a love of all things music theory. And you've been confronted with not one, not two, or 3, or 4 books of music theory, but 5. And the thought of starting with book 1 and ploughing through them book by book by book is enough to make you consider giving up music exams entirely and running away to join the French Foreign Legion for 10 years. Well, I've got good news for you. This series of lessons starts by looking at the actual examination and working backwards to find out what you need to know. Firstly, you'll already know a lot of theory, even if you don't realise it. Secondly, I've taken the syllabus apart for you and reassembled it in a way that I think you'll find much more helpful. So let's have a look at the exam paper itself, and a quick scan through shows that you'll be tested in the following 7 areas or units. Unit 1, Rhythm. Unit 2, Pitch. Unit 3, Keys and Scales. Unit 4, Intervals. Unit 5, Chords. Unit 6, Terms, Signs and Instruments. And finally, Unit 7, Music in Context, where you put all the information from Units 1 to 6 together. I understand if you think that we should start with Unit 1, but in fact there is a rather better approach. We are in fact going to start with Unit 6, Terms, Signs and Instruments. Take a short break, pause this video and print out a copy of the document from the website. It's quite long, but it contains absolutely everything you need for this unit. The reason we're starting with Unit 6 is that it is actually quite simple, although there's a lot of knowledge to absorb. The only material you'll need is the printout. The knowledge in this unit can be learnt while you are learning the other units. So you could do this lesson and the others in this unit, one after the other before moving on to the other units, or you can do other unit lessons alongside these. Firstly, don't panic. In this lesson, we're just going to look at Italian terms for dynamics, how loud or soft, articulation, and words to do with moving backwards and forwards within a piece of music. You will have encountered many of these terms already, but we're just making sure that you do know them. And also, it will allow you to hear the Italian words spoken properly, in case you've never heard them before and you've got the wrong idea about how they're pronounced. To start with dynamics, There are two basic words that you need. Piano, abbreviated as P, which means soft or quiet, and forte, abbreviated as F, meaning loud, literally strong. And one other word to go in front of them to make it moderately quiet or moderately loud, the Italian word mezzo, which literally means half. So, half quiet, half loud, mezzo piano and mezzo forte, moderately quiet, moderately loud, MP and MF. Learn how to spell these words. Remember that mezzo has the same ts sound that you get in pizza. That might help you remember the double Z. And a very useful trick in Italian, to make any adjective very, take off the last vowel and add issimo, I-S-S-I-M-O, I-S-S-I-M-O. So quiet, piano, lose the O, pian, and add I-S-S-I-M-O, issimo, pianissimo, very quiet, pianissimo, PP, or occasionally PPP, or even PPPP. The word, however many P's there are, is still pianissimo, never pianissimissimo. And for loud, forte, lose the E at the end, fort, add I-S-S-I-M-O, fortissimo, very loud, FF, or occasionally FFF, or even FFFF, when you want to be really loud. All of those are still fortissimo, no matter how many F's you put there. It's never fortimissimo. That would be silly. And if you want to be loud and then suddenly quiet, then it makes sense to say forte piano, loud soft, forte piano, or FP. Similar to forte piano are two Italian words meaning forced or accented, sforzando and sforzato. They mean the same thing from the point of view of the musician. And these two are abbreviated as SF or SFZ. Don't forget also, if you want to put an accent into a piece of music, you don't have to use SF or SFZ or the word sforzando or sforzato. You can just use the little accent sign. And that instructs us to play notes or chords with emphasis. And while we're speaking of accents, stronger than the ordinary accent is the witch's hat accent, as some of us call it. And this has an Italian word, marcato. If you want an alternative for pianissimo, very quiet, you need to use two words, sotto voce. And this is on the syllabus, but you won't see it often. Sotto voce literally means under the voice. In other words, in an undertone or a whisper. Sotto voce. And now for changes in dynamics, where you become gradually louder or quieter. For getting louder, use crescendo or cresque, or the opening hairpins. For getting softer, use decrescendo or decresque, or diminuendo, or dim, or the closing hairpins. It doesn't matter which you use if you decide to write music, but you do need to use one of those and you need to know them for the exam. Sometimes seen with diminuendo or decrescendo are the words a niente, like this, dim a niente, which means fade away to nothing. A niente to nothing. A niente. Now welcome to Controversy Corner. If you look in Discovering Music Theory Grade 5, these next three terms are listed as dynamic marks, meaning dying away. So you could use them as alternatives for diminuendo or decrescendo. And here they are: morendo, perdendosi, and smorzando. Smorzando often appears abbreviated as smorz. Now the problem with these three words is that technically they affect another quality of music making, not just the volume, but the speed. So these aren't just dying away in terms of volume, they are dying away in terms of speed. And there's another word which is fairly rarely used, rinforzando, or RF, or RFZ, which means the opposite. So it's not just getting louder, but perhaps also just a little bit quicker too. But they are listed in the ABRSM book as just being dynamics. Now for those terms to do with articulation. You need to know the following basic ones, and I'm sure you know these two already: staccato and legato. Staccato or stack, or the little dot placed above or below the note, and that means detached. Legato or leg, or notes joined with slurs, smoothly. In the case of the slur, do be careful to note that these slurs will join notes of different pitch. Rather confusingly, the same sort of curved line joining notes of the same pitch joins the notes together as one note, and I'm sure you already know this, is called a tie. It is not unusual for very good musicians to lose marks in theory exams by mistaking slurs for ties and ties for slurs. Be careful. Remember that you could be asked to play very detached, staccatissimo, or indicated with a little vertical dash above the note or below the note. Or you could be asked to play very smoothly, legatissimo. The Italian word tenuto, indicated with dashes above or below notes, means give the notes their fullest possible value, or perhaps held slightly longer, if possible, or give the note a little more weight or pressure. Sometimes you'll see both staccato and tenuto marks together to indicate a slight staccato, where the notes are slightly detached. Sometimes this is called semi-staccato and can be indicated with staccato dots and a curved slur line like this. Finally, for this lesson, a few Italian phrases used to instruct performers to move to a different part of the music. Da capo is very common and means go back to the beginning, and is almost always followed by the words al fine, which means to the end. Da capo al fine. So if you see at the end of a piece of music, da capo al fine, you go back to the start and then play until you reach the word fine, which is where you finish. It's a useful way for music publishers to save on printing and paper costs. You'll often see da capo abbreviated as DC. Similar is dal segno, often abbreviated as DS, which means go back to the sign, which is often an ornamental S, like this. Not on the syllabus, but so useful I include it here, is al coda after DC or DS. So DS al coda means go back to the sign, and then play from that point where the sign is up to where you see, usually at a double bar line, the coda sign, which looks like the telescopic sight on a rifle, a circle with crosshairs. At this point, you jump to a later part of the piece marked with a similar coda symbol, and the word coda is often printed as well. And the word coda happens to mean a tail or an ending. This is yet another useful way of saving paper and ink. Well done. We've covered an awful lot of information there. Do feel free to review this lesson, and we'll start lesson 2 with more on repeats before looking at Italian words to do with speed and mood. See you then.